Good evening and welcome to another edition of Down to the Wire. This year is our annual Breeders' Cup Roundtable, and we have gathered some handicappers from across America and kind of will be taking an early look at some of the factors that could come into play into the Breeders' Cup this year. Again, we have capping with Candace. Candace here. Matt Dinerman from San Diego, the track announcer from Emerald Downs this year. We also get from the Motor City, Ryan Dickey, who joined us last year when we talked about the Arlington Million. And from the suburb of the mountains, the man who has seen every one of Russell Road's victories at Charlestown, he is also joining us, Ryan Rapko. So good evening, everybody, and thanks again for joining us on this edition of Down to the Wire, our Breeders' Cup Roundtable. And let's start off with how you go about handicapping the 2 days, 13 races. Matt, with you, do you kind of like pick and choose races, or how do you kind of like to take a look at handicapping and stabbing at this card?
I like to pick and choose races. I mean, I like to look and see every single race. I like to handicap all of them. But at the end of the day, especially when it comes to wagering, I believe a good handicapper and a good horse player is somebody who can really key in on a certain race or particular races as opposed to betting every single one. So at the end of the day, I really key in on a few that I feel the most confident in.
Ryan Dickey, what's your approach to this big day?
Break it down into three segments. I break it down for the Friday races because I'm going to want to play pick 6 and a pick 4 on Friday. And then I want to play the first 4 in the early pick 4 at Keeneland on Saturday. And then I break it down to the last 4, culminating with the Classic.
And Ryan Rapko, do you have any strategy for these 2 days?
Well, basically, I try to center in, like Matt said, on a certain race, and I'll play like rolling pick 3s and rolling doubles. I think that's where a lot of the money is made there, and especially last year with horses like Work All Week and Caraconti and all that. If you center in on a horse that you really like, and then to spread out in races you're not sure in, you can really make a lot of money on especially on Saturdays. So that's what I tend to do.
Candace, what about from your angle? How do you approach these 2 days?
Yeah, it's kind of what everyone says. You just have to pick your spots. I'll go through the day or two before and handicap all the races, and then I really try to hone in on if I either have one big price and just get aggressive and bet it to win, or if maybe I can link a couple together in a double or a pick 3. But last year I kind of made my killing on just 3 or 4 big prices that you just got aggressive and played them to win.
What about handicapping early? Some people think that starting a couple of weeks out really is unnecessary, but for others, they like to watch the videos and maybe hone in on some of the Europeans. Ryan Dickey, what's your approach to that?
Well, it didn't do too well for me last year in the Arlington Million because I handicapped that race about a month and a half out, so that didn't work too well. But with the Breeders' Cup, with there being so many races over the 2 days, I think it's important for you to get all your ducks in a row, know who's going to race in each race, and be prepared because you've got a lot of European horses coming in, and if you don't know anything about them, you better learn fast.
Ryan Rapko, how about some of your philosophies on pre-handicapping and maybe watching some of the videos of some of the top contenders early? Does it help, or can it kind of get you focused in on some things that, at the end of the day, it's going to still come down to post position, some final works, and who actually enters the race will determine the race flow sometimes.
Yeah, I think if you get a good idea of who is going to be in the race to begin with. I mean, obviously a lot of Euros are going to be coming over, but if you really center on them and watch their replays and see what you're going to get out of them, then once the field actually takes form and you see post positions come out and you see try to find out how the race is going to shape from a pace standpoint, from a speed standpoint, it's hard to center in early on. I think once everything comes together, then you really can center in and really make some good choices at that time.
One of the big questions will be the pace of the Breeders' Cup Classic, and I think when Liam's map dropped out, Candace, did this change the way you're going to handicap the race, or what are some of your thoughts on the pace in the Classic or lack of pace?
I wouldn't say that there's a lack of pace, but Liam's map going to the dirt mile definitely changed things, I think, when he was in there. there really was a huge potential for a pace meltdown, and now that's looking less likely. There's still pace. American Pharoah, any race he runs in, there's going to be pace just because of the nature of how he runs his races. Even when he has an uncontested lead, he goes at a very steady tempo. He never goes slow. So I think it's going to be a truly run race with, a good to moderate tempo, but nothing too crazy on the fast or slow end.
Matt, has there been any angles over the years that you've had good luck with on these 2 days in the Breeders' Cup that, turf to dirt or certain tracks that have done well? And do you think this year Keeneland, with the race being at Keeneland, that will affect anything?
In terms of the Breeders' Cup Classic or just the overall,
Overall.
any race? Overall, you know what? I've had good success with Europeans, believe it or not. And even though, I know Candace is a big follower, for example, in European racing, I'm not as much, so I do my research early. What I've come to learn and what I've done well as especially last year, is being able to pick the other Europeans. So last year we had Telescope and Toronado come in, and they were very well regarded, and I went with the other Europeans and ended up doing pretty well. Because I think that the angle is when the Europeans come, you should take a look at every single one, because the best European may not always win. It might be the other European that's actually very good as well, but it's being overlooked by the star European, the best one.
Ryan Rapko, what about you? Do you think there's any factors this year with the races being held at Keeneland?
Well, I think there's going to be, especially with the turf, a lot more give than at Santa Anita. I really think the Europeans are going to relish the turf course there. I think, I have a lot of Europeans written down as who I'm looking at, and it's going to be, interesting to see which ones, step up and really, take big stage. But I really think that they're going to have a really big shot to sweep a lot of the turf races on Breeders' Cup weekend. As far as the dirt track goes, still trying to get a handle. I've been watching, some of the races, over the past, couple weeks of the meeting, and I'm just not sure where I'm centering it on that yet, if it's going to be, favoring one way or the other. So it's just as weeks go on, just, taking a look and see what I think will work.
Ryan Dickey, what about some of the thoughts on the distaff? Untappable, she's made $800,000 this year. She's only won one race. Wedding Toast is 3 for 3 at 9 furlongs, but some people still wonder if she can get 9 furlongs. And then you've got a couple of nice 3-year-olds in that race.
Well, I think that on the first day, on Friday, I think that's the deepest race you're going to have to go. I'm not going to say that I'm betting against Untappable, because I will put her in maybe the pick 6 or the pick 4s. But I think there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's probably 6 horses that can win that race. I think it's a very, very deep race this year.
Candace, I know you've been a Private Zone fan. Any thoughts on him entering the sprint versus the mile, and what really were some of their thoughts maybe in the decision-making process with Private Zone?
I think the sprint definitely makes a lot more sense than him, because the mile is 2 turns, and that's kind of the key for him, is you want to keep him at 1 turn. Now, the sprint in and of itself is going to be a really interesting race, because Run Happy is so fast, but he tends to miss the start. So, should he miss the start here and rush to the lead like he did last time when he won, I think that really could affect the pace of this race and could result in a meltdown, because, these sprinters aren't used to someone just flying by them all of a sudden. I think, several horses will go with him. If he goes, and Private Zone will be one of them. So when I look at the sprint, I'm looking at it as, this is a race that has an absolute potential for a meltdown, and those are usually the kinds of races where you can really find a big price. So as good as Private Zone has been to me all year, and as much as I would say, in any multiple race wagers, you have to use him, when it comes to a race like that, I think you want to spread and use some closers and maybe make your win bet on a deep closer at a big price. That's the way I see it right now, at least.
Ryan Rapko, any juveniles that have caught your eye that maybe you think could step up and improve on Breeders' Cup weekend?
One in particular, I'm looking at a horse named Cocked and Loaded by Larry Ravelli. I really think coming off a layoff at Churchill, he had a very nice victory, and I really think he's going to step up off of that effort. Now, I think the horse's name is Brody's Cause, who had a very nice win last week at Keeneland, and he looked great. He absolutely looked great, albeit it was off surface. But I think cocked and loaded. I think he coming off a layup. I think Larry's really getting him tuned up, and I think he's going to fire at a nice price. So I'm looking at him right now a little bit. I really don't like any of the others right now. As first to say, I mean, Nyquist is undefeated, but I mean like I said, he's good right now, but just takes one race, he can make a bad step or whatever, and then that's and he's at short odds, and then you're stuck. You're like, oh, I bet this favorite, and that's it. So I'm looking at this horse cocked and loaded right now. I think he's going to be a good price in the juvenile.
One of the biggest stories this year is going to be Beholder taking on the boys. Candace, what are some of your thoughts? Do you just handicap it like a normal race and pick out form and speed, and ultimately you'll either toss her or include her, or do you have any hard opinions on her?
She has some appeal to me in that of the favorites, she has some tactical speed, and she has a very nice turn of foot. So I think she is a horse who, of any of the horses who will be forwardly placed, I think she's really that one who has the potential to maybe sit there right behind American Pharoah and make that big sweeping move into the turn. It's a move we haven't seen anybody be successful with. Of course, with Pharoah, the only time he's lost this year was to a very deep closer in Keen Ice. But I think Beholder at least has that potential. I'd give her a long look in this race, but I do think this is a race where you're going to have to take some stands somewhere. You can't use Beholder, Honor Code, and Pharoah. You have to maybe pick one or two at the most, and then look for a price somewhere, maybe in the form of a Keen Ice, who I think could go off at double-digit odds, or Tonalist, who I think who could go off at double-digit odds. I would consider Beholder, but I couldn't imagine myself using both her and Pharoah. I'm going to choose one of them.
Matt, do you buy into the philosophy that Beholder runs their better races out west, or has that just been circumstances?
I think that's been circumstances. When you look back, when she was a 3-year-old in the Kentucky Oaks, she was a totally different filly, and that's one of the great things that Richard Mandella has done with this filly, was take a filly that was temperamental and had a hard time relaxing and sort of fought her rider to being able to relax and really go farther and learn how to race as opposed to just run. And I think she was a totally different filly as a 3-year-old in the Kentucky Oaks. And then going to Belmont Park, she sort of had a weird trip that day, came out with an injury, and I think that now, third time going shipping, I think she's a new filly. I think she has a different mind, and I think getting that work over the track is going to help her.
Ryan Dickey, any thoughts on Beholder, good or bad?
Yeah, 2 words. Play against.
All right, any particular reason?
I don't think she's going to be able to hang with the boys. I really don't. I'm with Candace. You're going to have to kick somebody out. Are you going to boot American Pharoah? Or are you going to boot Honor Code? For me, it's going to be Beholder. I'm going to kick her out, and I like Keen Ice again. I think Keen Ice can win the Classic.
Ryan Rapko, what are your thoughts on Beholder?
I'm a pitch as well on Beholder. I mean, I think I think it's going to be a tall test. These are going to be the best horses she faces all year, and I think for her to to do this, it's going to be monumental. And if she beats me, she beats me. But I can't endorse her, and I just can't. I think Pharoah's training up to this, and I think he's going to run big. And Honor Code is just a matter of the distance for him. If he's going to get it or not. So, but Beholder's a pitch for me.
Matt, what are some of your thoughts on Honor Code? He's never been 10 furlongs. Does that prep at a mile make you like him any more or any less, or what's kind of your philosophy on handicapping Honor Code in the Classic?
Well, he's a deep closer, and I think he's like a lot of deep closers. When he gets a good pace to run into, he's very effective, as you saw in the mile. Now, of course, with Liam's map out, we might not see that really fast pace that we thought might occur with Liam's map in the race. But I think looking at this horse, just his running style, the way he runs, I think he can get 1.25 miles just simply off of breeding and how he runs on. The question, I think, pace makes the race for him. So that's sort of what I look at with that.
Ryan Dickey, what are your thoughts on Honor Code?
I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to play against also. I think that the 2 winners of the race are going to be American Pharoah or Keen Ice. That's it for me.
Okay. Candace, did the mud and the mile sway your thoughts on Honor Code either way?
They did it, and he's a horse who I think with the defection of Liam's map, we're going to see him at maybe a slightly bigger price because people will say that there isn't enough pace in this race, but I am of the believer that in map actually went so fast and got that field so spread out that it wasn't near closers as people were just left with a lot of home. You know, there's races where the pace is almost so fast that it disadvantages a deep closer like Honor Code. So in a race like this, you know, I think it could be perfect. I don't think he needs a suicidal pace. He just needs a true pace. That's what he's going to get here. And, you know, instead of being 15, 20 lengths back at the start of the race, he's going to be quite a bit closer. So he is one who I would certainly expect to be in the mix. I don't know why everyone, you know, for a period of time this year thought he all of a sudden was like no sense. I think people forgot he was, you know, the favorite for the Kentucky Derby for that winter after his juvenile season. But he's one who I know you and Craig and I, we've been on him for a long time in futures, and I wouldn't be swayed off of him now.
Ryan Dickey, any thoughts on the sprint? Any pace factors? Some years it can get pretty wild. Last year was one of them, and we've seen other years where a secret circle just, you know, he can win as well. So any thoughts on any horses in this race?
Well, this is one of the ones that I'm having a hard time with right now. I really don't have a lean yet. I mean, there are some nice closers in there. Let's see who else we like there. From the mid-pack, if Appealing Tail goes in the sprint, I like Appealing Tail in the sprint. That's pretty much the only sort of lean I have on that race right now, but I'm not real strong in this race yet.
Matt, any chance Striker PhD supplements to the sprint, and that's who you take, or what?
Man, I wish he'd get a fast pace to run in. That we all know.
Any thoughts on Run Happy or some of the other horses that people are talking about in that race?
Yeah, I'm with Ryan on this one. I think this is a pretty tough race. In terms of class, excuse me, in terms of class, you got Private Zone and Run Happy, and those two appear to be the big stars here. Wild Dude's a nice horse. If he has a pace to run in, I could definitely see him running down horses, but the thing is he hasn't been running against these types of runners in California. And I think the rest of them, you got Saludos Amigos, Favorite Tail, who's very quick, Big Mocker, Masochistic. I mean, they all sort of fall into the same category, in my opinion, in terms of class. I think any one of those horses could beat another one on any given day. So this one I'm having trouble with in terms of the sprint, but I think this is a race, if you want to spread, this is a good race to do it.
Ryan Rapko, any early thoughts on the turf? Of course, we all know the Pizza Man delivers. That's going to be given, but now he's got to step it up and face some potential ARC horses.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Golden Horn, Golden Horn's goes through him. That's all I would say. Goes through him, and then of course Flintshire, who really had a great race at Saratoga, really just put away Red Rifle and Twilight Eclipse. I mean, just mauled him over. I mean, it goes through them too. I mean, Twilight Eclipse and the Pizza Man. I mean, those are your two best U.S. shot or North American shots, I think. I mean, I really don't see anything past Golden Horn and Flintshire, honestly. I mean, it's just them two and everybody else at this point. I mean, unless somebody freaks on that day, like I know in the mile a couple years ago, Court Vision just freaked at 1,000,000,000 to 1, something like that. That's the only way these two get beat. I mean, if they both take a bad step, then they take a bad step. But if one takes a bad step, then the other one's going to win. I just see it that way right now.
Ryan Dickey, older handicappers like me have seen the ARC winner lose 5 times. I just think it's hard to peak on the ARC, because trust me, the ARC was the goal. The Breeders' Cup is an afterthought, plus shipping across the world. Are you going to be a little bit more skeptical, or are you on the Golden Horn bandwagon?
No, I'm with my esteemed colleague with the same name. I like Flintshire. I think Flintshire is one of the better bets on Saturday.
Candace, what about you with the ARC? I'm a firm believer that the winner of that ARC was pointed for the ARC and not necessarily a guaranteed winner here in the U.S.
I wouldn't be so sure about that. I had Flincher at big odds at the ARC, just knowing that they were going to go slow and he was going to be forwardly placed. and Golden Horn easily had his measure there. Golden Horn has done so much this year. He's only lost one time, and that was over ground that wasn't to his liking at all. For me, if Golden Horn comes here, which is how they've talked, then he's certainly the one to go through. There's a lot on the line for him as far as stud value is concerned, with him only having that one loss and with him being so for them to come here to the Breeders' Cup, they would be very confident, because I would say that him losing here could be very detrimental to his stud value, because this isn't a top-notch race on their calendar. They're sending him here to win.
Shipping is always tough in that race, and I think it's going to. The problem is one of those horses always doesn't. I mean, last year supposedly the Euros were the greatest thing, and Main Sequence beat them, and I think it was because of the shipping. It does nothing to do with the form; it has to do with the shipping.
Well, and Flinch here again, the one thing about Flincher you can like is that they've kept him to the same schedule as last year as far as the big races go. He went ARC, he's coming here, and then he's going back to Hong Kong. That's exactly like last year. But then again, you talk about the Euros last year, and Main Sequence beat them. So how do you rate Main Sequence?
Well, it's all, like I say, I think shipping I think the Euros are better on paper. It's just how are they going to ship? How about the turf sprint? That one this year is a little bit different because it's 5.5 furlongs and not down the hill at Santa Anita. Matt, any thoughts on that race?
Yeah, this is another one, just like the sprint. It's a wide open race at this point. I'm really happy to hear that Irad is going to get back aboard Lady Shipman. I think she had a rough trip in her last race. She was on the pace. The jockey got a little lazy late at the wire and just got nipped. And she's going to be tough if she runs her races at Saratoga, I think. I really think she can turn around after that effort and run a really big race here against the boys.
Candace, anybody that's coming over from Europe for the filly and mare turf?
Who'd be the most interesting should she come over is Aidan O'Brien's filly Found, who they've been mentioning, connections have mentioned her possibly coming over. Now, she ran in the ARC and she had a very troubled trip. She was out the back early. They obviously went very slow from the get-go. And she was one times out the back of the pack as they came for home, and she absolutely flew home late to get about 5th or 6th. She would love fast ground if she can get it. But a very well-bred filly, one who's been well-regarded, and one who I think has a little bit more improvement to find, a little more to give this season. She had a late start to the season after she had a kind of a setback early on in the off-season, so she had a little bit of a late start, missed a couple key races, and so I think this is a race that they pointed her to for a while. As we've seen in the past, Aidan O'Brien isn't afraid to point his colts and his fillies to the Breeders' Cup turf and the filly and mare turf. So should Found come, I think she would be the one who, should really take the attention.
What about bankroll on a day like this, Matt? Do you try to make a score? How do you kind of break up your bankroll between, win wagers and doubles and pick fours and things like that?
Well, I sort of look more at exotics and win bets, exactas and trifectas, and this one sort of spread. I sort of do, make a separate bankroll for Friday and then go Saturday. I just got out of college, so I don't have too much money to bet. but I think that the smart thing to do is basically pick your races, and based on those races, go with what you have, and try to find, based on how much you need to spread or not spread, just factor that all in.
Maybe Candace can loan you some money.
It's still interesting because, you don't necessarily need a lot of money. Like you say, if you can pick 1 or 2 races, no matter what your bankroll is, it's still, a chance to make a score if you pick the right race.
Sure, and especially if you get some value in there, like in the filly and mare sprint, I'm going to take a shot with Super Majesty and hope that she goes off at 15, 20 to 1, and if she can come in, great.
Ryan Dickey, any philosophies on betting and how you kind of organize your bankroll for these 2 days?
Yeah, on the first day, I try to use the pick 6 with the 2 graded stakes that come before the 4 Breeders' Cup. I try to play those 2 races first. If I'm doing well and I'm alive into the first Breeders' Cup race, that will depend on how I play the first Breeders' Cup race. If I'm dead, then obviously I start with a new pick 4, and I work my way from there. I basically structure my per race bets based upon how my multi-race bets are doing.
Okay. What about you, Ryan Rapko? How do you structure your bankroll?
I mean, for me, I try to center on the horizontal exotics as much as I can. I play the rolling pick 3s all day long. It really helped. It really worked out for me last year. I closed out one with Texas Red, and I had another one going, and I messed up and throughout work all week I had them written down, and it really messed up the rest of my day. But at the end of the day, you're centering in on win bets and stuff. Byron as my last bet of the day to get me even. So if you like some horses to center in on, especially at a price to win wager, even if you're down, one comes in, you're either even or you're up. So I really center on the horizontals and little win bets here and there. So.
Candace, what are some of your philosophies?
For me on Breeders' Cup weekend, I, really center around aggressive win bets. Like I said earlier, it's what got me far last year. We had Bobby's Kitten and Texas Red and Bayern and Day at the Spa. So, even though I wasn't able to link anything together in multiple races, I was able to make a good amount of money, just putting $50 or $100 on a horse to win. If depending on how confident you feel about it. So, a race like Bayern, where we've been saying for a long time and thought he's going to win the race, that's one where you have to hammer it because you don't get opportunities where you're very confident about a horse in a big field who's a nice price. So this is kind of that one meeting where you're going to get those opportunities where there's going to be very few races with a very heavy favorite. So when you're confident, you have to take advantage of that.
What about Friday versus Saturday, Ryan Rapko? Do you kind of keep a larger bankroll for Saturday?
Absolutely. Saturdays you get the bulk of the races and the bulk of the action that day, and it's just, like I said, there could be prices all over the place. So Friday versus Saturday, it's Saturday all day for me.
What about the circumference of the mile? There's a lot of talk about that. They've kind of ran that one race last week, and boy, I thought it might favor the inside. Ryan Dickey, did you have a chance to see that race or see the how they're going to run that mile?
No, actually, I didn't, but I do think that out of all of the races that are going to be held over the 2 days, I think that the Dirt Mile and the BC Mile are going to be two of the most interesting races. So if you throw this added configuration, and that's going to maybe change things a little bit more. So like I said, those two races on Friday, the Dirt Mile, and on Saturday, the BC Mile, I think those are going to be probably two of the most exciting races of the weekend.
All right, we'll go around and take a look at everybody's kind of some long shots or some horses that you think might make some waves. Candace, give us a couple of horses that you're kind of looking at, you think might be over 10-1 that could hit the board here.
I really have my eye on that I know is going to be a big prize, this Big Mocker and the Sprint. Like I said earlier, that's a race that I think really has the potential for a pace meltdown. So, Big Mocker kind of has become a closer out of necessity lately. Since Dubai, he ran in Del Mar, and he didn't just miss the start, but he was out wide the whole way. And
Matt, any horses over 10-1 or so that you think could make some noise on Breeders' Cup Day?
Yeah, I'll give you two. The first one is Super Majesty that I talked about earlier. I just think she can sit off the speed, and I think she's one that's really sort of up and coming. And sometimes I look for those, which is a horse that maybe at their peak right at Breeders' Cup time. I think she's getting better, and I think she's really nice. And another one is in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I think Swipe could be over 10-1, and I think that he loves 2 turns. I think the farther he goes, the better. But I think if he had a better trip against Nyquist, he might have actually been able to win that race. Some believe different, but I think that horse is a very nice horse and can run well at good odds.
Ryan Dickey, any couple of long shots to throw out there?
Yeah, I'm looking at the Juvenile Turf. I think that's going to be the one where you're going to have a big favorite in Aeroforce. And if Aidan O'Brien gets one of 2 horses in, if he gets Waterloo Bridge or Washington, D.C. in, those horses are going to take a lot of money. But I think the winner of that race, and I'm going to channel my inner league horse over here, and I'm going to pull out the Conquest Stables racing hat here. I'm going to go with Conquest Daddio in the juvenile turf. He'll probably be around, 12 to 1, 15 to 1 maybe. So that's my best pick on Friday. Conquest Daddio.
All right, yeah, he was definitely a shot the last time. Ryan Rapko, any long shots that you think people should take a second look at?
I'm not sure what kind of price you're going to get on her, but I think in the the distaff, she always fires a really good race when she's fresh. I think stop charging Maria. Call me crazy. I think, if she's coming off the layoff, I think she's going to fire fresh. I think she's going to fire at a nice price, So I'm looking at her a little bit. In the sprint, a lot of speed in that race. I think a horse that could just sit off of it and pop at a nice little number is Holy Boss. Had a off track the last time. First time against Grade 1 Company didn't show up, but I really think, getting back to 6 furlongs, I really think that he's going to fire at a nice number. So I'm really looking at them two right now. Outside of that, if you look at me for the Classic, I don't know what kind of price you're on, but I really like Tonalist. I really do right now. Had a sneaky year. Has been very sneaky with the race picking, and I think if stuff falls apart, if they're sitting up close, he has to sit close. If he's sitting closer, I think he's got a good shot. But if he's not sitting close, he's not going to do well. But I think Tonalist has a good shot in the Breeders' Cup Classic, and hopefully a nice price above 10 to 1.
And we got to get what happened at the mountain there on Saturday when both horses got taken to school there. Lucy's Bob Boy and Russell Road. What went wrong?
I don't know what went wrong. I watched that race. I was like, I can't even explain it. It gets me. I don't want to get so upset. I don't want to start, swearing and stuff. It's
a family show.
It's a family show. You're right. Yeah, I can't be cursing on here. So it's
right.
just. It was just I don't know. I
don't know. It was very bizarre, but it was fun to watch.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. Yeah.
Just sometimes stuff happens in racing. That's why they call it racing, I guess.
That's why. Yeah.
It's kind of like that Toronto baseball game today with Texas. Just stuff happens.
Oh man,
that was something.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us again on our annual Down to the Wire Roundtable. We'll come back next week as we take a look at some of the Europeans and take a little bit more deeper dive into some of the horses considering the turf races from Europe next week. That's going to do it for another edition of Down to the Wire.